Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ira Novoselsky. I'm chairman of the Subcommittee on Public Works for the Revere City Council. Today is February 5th, 2018, and I'd ask everybody to please rise and salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to remind everybody, let them know that since the last meeting, our PA system is still out of commission, so anybody that's speaking to speak up so everybody can hear you. And our councilors have temporary microphones for the TV, so we can use those and move those around as needed. So today on the Public Works, our members are Council McKenna, Council Morbido, Council Powers, and Council Rizzo, and myself. I'd like to thank Council Guanasso for attending and Council Patch. Today we're going to talk about 4 items. We have an hour to discuss this. There's another meeting following this, so I'd like to try and keep each item around 15 minutes or so. So we're going to the items I listed on the agenda were snow removal, outstanding sign requests, status of new DPW equipment, and our 311 services. So I'd like to call on our Superintendent of Public Works. You don't push it, just talk. It's not like the other one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tom Goodwin, Superintendent of Public Works.
I know we've had 4 or 5 snowstorms and ice storms over the past several months, and I know I myself, down in my ward, you know, I have had some issues. I think the biggest issue was on the biggest storm when we called a snow emergency ban and it wasn't enforced. So I know it was called on and no towing was done. And the people in my neighborhoods move their cars so the plows can still do their work, which was the total intent. Now, I don't know why, and it was asked why, you know, the plows didn't go up to the curbing. I don't know, Mr. Superintendent, if you can.
Well, I can tell you, obviously, the only problem we had getting back to the curb line was on the big storm. I don't know about the towing. I do know the police were out there, you know, doing their job that day, but that day, that storm just happened to take place during the height of traffic in the morning, afternoon. There was a lot of activity out there in the streets, and subsequently, but I think what it really all comes down to is the city really needs to have a comprehensive snow removal plan and a parking ban of some sorts, because kind of what happens, say like on Thornton Street, you know, we tend to kind of push the snow to that because that's where the room is, because there's no parking on that side. Then the people are out there during the course of the day, they're trying to dig their cars out at August on the other side. So there are areas in the city, I think, that we definitely need to have a total parking ban or no parking at all. I know that's kind of hard for some of you people to swallow up here because you represent your constituencies, but you know, the town of Winthrop does that, and that does have an adverse effect on Council McKenna's area, because some of those people take their cars from Winthrop and they park them in the available streets in Revere, and they leave them there until the storms are over, which creates problems. The town of Lynn, there's absolutely, and they're as dense or denser than we are. There's absolutely no parking on the streets when there's a snowstorm. Like I said, it's only the bigger storms that have this real problem that we do have, but it was tough. I mean, you know, and the other thing is, you know, ISD is getting me involved. The mayor, myself, the gentleman from 311 sat down with the mayor and discussed, you know, what the shortcomings were that storm, and we're, you know, looking at ISD to go out there and, you know, write some tickets. They haven't done that in the past, and you know, if we don't learn by our mistakes, we're not going to learn. So I think the key to this is, especially with the bigger storms, what the problem with that is that you need to, if you have a snow emergency program, it needs to be in effect whether you get 3 inches of snow or 3 feet of snow. And that's just the way it has to go. The other issues that we're having is that, especially in the Beachmont area, is that a lot of those streets need to be made permanently one-way so that we don't have all this conflict with cars, especially when that gate is closed. The floodgate on Winter Parkway is closed. You have cars coming up these narrow streets and they come head to head, there's nowhere to go, we back up traffic. Council McKenna was out there with the snowplow people, she saw it firsthand what goes on. Ordinarily a street that might take you 20 minutes to clear was taking over an hour. And these are some of the problems we ran up against because of the traffic and the people out working in the storm, kind of against us actually. So it was one of the most difficult storms I've dealt with.
Councilor
I
Norris.
know, hang on 1 second.
Go ahead.
Council.
Yeah.
I know, back in 2015, when we had all that 109 inches of snow, we started saying, we need to do a plan, we need to do a plan, and here it is, 2018,
I agree.
and we're still in the same position we were before. So I think that the traffic commission, whether they do it all as a full body to start, or just a subcommittee to start, and then bring it to the full body and come up with a plan for us, and even a couple of the councilors, I'm sure, would be glad to be involved in it, but I agree, we need that full plan. So, Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I put in as a motion is to put a digital sign down on Beachmont Corner when we have snowstorms like that, because what would happen was people were cutting through to go to Winthrop, and they didn't know the road was closed, so when they were trying to get back up the hill, they got stuck. We had to get all those tow trucks down there. So that's one solution. The second solution is that in March, I am going to have a forum for Brad Street, Crest, Endicott, and a couple of, maybe Pearl Ave, to see if we can get some one-ways there. I want to see what the people say. So that's going to happen too. So that might help you relieve some of those problems with the snowplow. But one of the things I noticed when I was on the snowplow is that Jimmy Mercurio couldn't get up the hill because all these cars were stuck. So we couldn't get up Summer Street to go up to Brad Street Ave. And that wasn't done, none of the plows could get up there because all the roadways, Endicott was blocked, Summer was blocked because of all these people that were trying to get through, to get home to East Boston, because Bennington Street was flooded too. So it was a mess. It was a mess. But anyways, so that's what we got planned.
Councilor Nassau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me like during the last year, during my re-election year, the city took upon itself to look at these parking restrictions and one-sided parking and stuff, and they started enforcing it. Lo and behold, after the election, or the new election is coming upon us, that's been laxed. And I think what I'm seeing is, the crux of this whole thing is, if we had proper parking restrictions all the time, it would be so much easier to put in place a game plan for snowstorm emergencies. It seems like we were starting to make a move on it, and now I don't know what's happened. Lowell Street, for instance, I'm just using this because I travel it every day. They're parking on both sides now. Some good law-abiding residents are abiding by the signage, some aren't. Then we go to Fairfield Street and we make concessions for one street because of a couple of people, who are very, very nice people, by the way. But all due respect, the rest of us are all in the same ballgame here. So again, allowing parking on both sides of the street is an infringement upon proper plowing.
No question about it.
And I noticed that all of these individuals that complained to me during these past snowstorms that we've had, none of them had the courage to go out and vote in November. These are people that are very vocal, and I'm outraged by that. They become civic-minded individuals, but they don't take a minute to go out and vote and put representation before them that should be in place to help them. So I'm just saying, we have to put something in place, and I think it, you know, it doesn't mean because of snow. I think we have to tackle, we touched upon it, like I said earlier, parking restrictions. We have to come in and put a parking program within our community to alleviate the problem throughout the year, and then in times of emergency, it makes it so much easier. We'll never get to curb without cooperation. You know, and I talked to one individual where they have and they have a great program. I forget what town he mentioned it was. 4 hours in the morning, one side gets done. 4 hours in the afternoon, the other side gets done. So this is how you complete curb to curb. You know, you have to have cooperation, and you'd be surprised. Who knows more about their street than the neighbors who live on the street? So they'll get in tune with that once we get a program in place. And I have people on Conan Street that complain, you know, one's favoritism for this, they know someone from the DPW, this one here. I know that's all nonsense, but what it is if you just go down the middle of the street, sometimes it doesn't take the effect that it should take. You know, it doesn't give proper passage, and it's dangerous. And then, when we're coming up with new ordinances that want to restrict people to shovel their sidewalks, question, where's the snow going? If they don't put it somewhat in the street a little bit, how do you do your sidewalk? I mean, because more often than not, we're not in the suburbs where they have yards where they could dump the excess snow and stuff like that. We have curb to curb, we have sidewalk homes, they're right on the sidewalk. So we have a pretty challenge in front of us, but I think we have to start somewhere, and I think it all comes with the parking restrictions. That's my effort on snow, you know, and I know that sometimes it's painful. In this particular year, the ice seemed to be more of a factor than it was in previous years, and because we had such a drastic period of very, very low temperatures. So that already automatically made the ground susceptible to freezing. So all the ingredients were in place for freezing for no matter what came down. So we were challenged no matter what we did. And so I applaud what you've done, and I think the DPW did an unbelievable job in handling what was happening. And unfortunately, some people didn't think it was fast enough, but as soon as I got the recalls, I checked it out, and then I made my calls to the DPW for assistance. And I always try to make sure that it's a valid one, because if some people just don't want snow in front of their homes at all, so we have to work with that too.
You can see that constantly if you drive up and down the streets after a storm. You look at people's property. There's no snow in their driveways, no snow on the sidewalks, but, you know, where did it go? It went in the street.
Right.
And that just compounds the problem, because,
Right.
you know, after we were out there for 20 hours, we said, okay, it stopped snowing, everything looks good. You send the guys home, you come back in the next morning, and it looks like it was never done, because people are, you know, literally plowing snow out in the street, snow blowing out in the street, and they're impassable. And, you know, especially in Iriswood, that's very, very difficult up there, because they have one-sided parking, and then once that builds up on the other side, unless I send the front end loader down there and I'm pushing back, you know, a mound 5 feet high, right back into their driveways and everything, then we get what are you blocking people's driveways against us? So I think that the parking restriction is the proper way to go, and a little bit of education on, you know, what to do, you know, don't keep opening up your driveway openings, because every time you open that driveway opening up, that's the only clearance there is, and it's not, you know, easy snow to plow. Once we go by there and there's an opening there, you got a plow blade that's, you know, 10 feet wide, and it's pushing everything in there, and it's all frozen ice and melted snow. It's not, and I understand why people get frustrated, but they actually create their own problems by throwing the snow back out in the street.
Councilman McKenna?
I just had an idea. I don't know if it would work or not. We have the street sweeping, and every, you know, one side has, you know, instead of doing it every other week, maybe you could do it maybe Wednesday and Thursday, something like that. Like have a snow removal
Well, snow removal starts getting into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And so when we're talking about plowing, the best way to do it is you put a parking ban on, parking restriction on. You're not allowed to park in the street until 12 to 24 hours after the completion of the snow, depending on the size of it, because that gives you the ability to push everything back and people can open up their driveways. So unless we're willing to do that, it's really not gonna happen. And the people that do have, no parking on their side, all the snow goes there. And it kinda is unfair, because we're plowing. We do try to plow left and right. But when you have 2 lanes to the right, 1 to the left, obviously you get twice as much snow to the right than you are to the left. So it does become a problem. And in the narrow streets, especially where you are, Joanne, I mean, we can't get a big piece of
I know,
equipment up on the hill because the streets are too narrow. And they're parking on sidewalks, they're parking all over the place, and it's difficult.
The other
And,
problem is too, that a lot of these people, especially myself, I live on the hill, so I don't have a driveway. So, and I know in Iris Ward too, there's a lot of people that don't have driveways. So it's like, the people across the street, they have driveways, so they can put, and that's where the ban is, on their side. But where I live, there's no, we don't have a driveway, so
I think-
it's tough when you don't have a driveway and you don't know where to put your car.
Well, that's the reason why I think we don't have a comprehensive program, because all people don't have driveways. But when you look at other cities and towns that are smaller than us and larger than us, they do it. We just don't. We just haven't implemented it. It can be done, it comes with a little pain, and it probably comes with more political pain than anything else, because, to me, I got a job to do. And as long as those streets are open, we can push it back. But then it becomes, people do get aggravated, and we understand why they get aggravated. It's very frustrating, and they have a tendency to take it out on you people as opposed to us.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Council Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, I don't, actually, the snow removal's been very good in my ward this year. Not too many complaints. But I do want to mention, ice. As you know, we had that problem on Orvis Road for years. The illegal zip pump going out in the street constantly and flooding and getting 10 inches of ice. And I keep calling you, and you keep responding, and I feel bad for you guys. They gotta go down there, and they gotta scrape that off. But now I noticed the ones they're replacing with the illegal sump pumps, they're going in there and they're replacing them, and they're putting the outlets out to the street. And now I got the similar problem on Asti Road.
We have over 30 locations throughout the city that we're experiencing that
And one on
problem that
Geneva
you have.
Street.
Yes.
And, it seems ridiculous if you're just creating more problems.
I think in the wintertime, there should be some resolution that we come up with, that the people should be putting that water in their backyard. It'll freeze, they'll get a big pile of ice, but it won't affect public safety.
Right.
Agreed.
I know this doesn't relate to you directly, but, Councilman McKenna has a ordinance proposal to, upgrade or update the sidewalk
Parking.
shoveling for homes.
Shoveling, yeah, snow removal.
And I know there's one on the books now, but I don't think is there one on the books, Madam
No,
Clerk?
they took it off.
They
There's
take it
one
all
for
off?
commercial property only.
Yeah, we're gonna make
For
residential.
commercial, yeah, so, but, in response to Councilor Guanasso's shoveling the sidewalks and pushing the snow on it, realize these folks don't have to shovel the sidewalk from the house out to the curb. They can do a 3-foot path, and it's still enough to abide by the rule and still have a pile of snow along the curb, and they can still pile their snow from their cars or their driveways in that other 3-foot area from the sidewalk. Sidewalks are what, 6 or 8 feet, Johnny?
Actually, they vary. For some parts of the city, they're as small as 3 feet, and other parts of the city, they're as wide as 8.
Well, the
So
wider ones can.
I would say
handle
the
it.
average is probably 4.5, 5
5
feet.
feet. So, you know, if you did, you know, took a foot for snow and 2.5 feet for walking, it's a legitimate,
And like I say,
Walking path.
the real issue is when you get in a foot of snow or more, that's when it really creates these situations that you can't deal with. Because even some of these bigger storms, if you look at the weather, you can kind of forecast how long it's gonna be around. We're getting some snow that's coming this week, and it'll be gone by Saturday, so it's just, you know.
okay, any other issues on snow? Councilors,
No.
all set? The next item is the sign department. Can you update us on that?
Yeah, we made some changes there. We have some temporary reassignments. I have 3 people that are in the sign department right now to try to catch up on the backlog of signs that there. I know they've been working in your area. They're pretty much caught up with what they need to do in Ward 2. And after that, we're going down to Ward 1. We're going to meet
Thank you.
with Council McKenna Wednesday morning to go over her plan. She has quite a few signs that need to be done there. Other than that, the guys are kind of staying pretty much on top of it. I think once we get this backlog finished up, we got to go back down to Council Guanasso's area on Fairfield Street and put it back the way it was originally, because it's just, it's not working out for us down there. And so we're going to put it back to its original, how it was no parking on one side, and that's just the way it's gonna have to be, because it's just not safe.
I'd like to welcome Council Powers to our meeting. Council McKenna, anything else on this?
No.
No,
Thank you.
Council Guanasso?
Well, I had in the past several requests for signs. A couple of people moved since then, and the signage has been, Donnie, to be honest with you, a major problem based on the fact that requests are made, and it seems like they just go out in space, and historically, we've been told that, you know, this person's sick, this one's not in, this is, you know, it's an understaffed department to begin with. How do we, what would be your recommendation to
My
make sure?
recommendation is just to follow up on what 311 is presently doing. I think now that they're up and running, I think that problem's gonna go away after, as long as we maintain the current men that we have within the department once we catch up. You know, not to cast aspersion on the prior governors, but the record keeping was poor. This doesn't allow that. We actually take it out of the hands of the men, and Ruben and his staff categorize it for us. David put it in place, and so it's, I think once you give this 311 a chance to really show what it can do, it's gonna, for constituent services, not just for signs, but for everything. It's really a good program. I think it's gonna work out well, and it's gonna have a lot of benefits for you people sitting here.
So you think it's going to be a useful tool
I
in
think it's gonna be a
signage
very,
also?
very useful tool, and some of these points of frustration that you people have are gonna be eliminated.
Well, city service is a major frustration, not only for the resident, but for us, because we're receiving these calls,
I agree.
and it's frustrating to see the individual who's made a call to you a month later, and that call's not addressed, and, you know, it's like, you're put in an awkward position, you know, like, you really didn't do anything for me. Well, you know,
understand.
you're non-productive because you don't get the job done. And that's said, not once, not twice, but unfortunately, quite a few times throughout the course of a year. And it's hurtful based on the fact that I don't want to put anyone down, and I can't do the service that they're asking for. I just trying to cut the red tape between the resident and City Hall, and
And I
through the
think-
efforts of 311, I hope that does the
That's
job.
definitely gonna do it, Arthur. I have all the confidence in the world with 311, just seeing what it's done. I have all the confidence in the world with the gentlemen that are running it, and we have a good working relationship, and it takes that step away from us, so that generally what was happening is a lot of stuff gets put to the back burner, and then stuff that comes in, 2 days ago, 3 days ago gets done, and then there's stuff laying out there for 6 months or longer that's not getting done.
In the
Because
tree,
out of
just to
sight,
get
well,
the one
tree
incident.
issues are totally different.
And that's one I'm dying to get removed from my process.
We
I'm gonna
can
go
talk
311
about
with that
Arthur,
because
but the bottom line,
they say
not
it's
to
on a
cut you
list,
off,
and
not
everyone
to
says,
cut you off.
where's the list?
The
Where am I
bottom
in the
line
list?
with the trees, there's just never enough money.
Okay, but we have to at least be truthful and say, we don't have the funding right now, but we refer to the, I don't know how to quote it, the list. And they say to me, okay, well, what's the
There is a
list?
list,
Where
but-
am I on this
but
list?
people have to understand, because they don't like a tree in front of their house, doesn't
Right.
mean we can take it down.
No, I understand, and
There are a
all
lot
they
of
need to be.
We get a lot of requests for trees, because people don't want them there, but
Yeah.
they're good,
Any
healthy,
live tree has to be
trees,
recognized
and
that it
that's-
stays.
That's the,
And as
but-
they mature, they
But
get
the
even
next-
more
the-
expensive.
The next thing they might ask, well, and how about if we can't remove the tree, how about trimming the tree so it's acceptable to be in
That
front of
can
my
be done.
home? Because some of these,
trimming the
they were
tree.
putting the trees weren't the right source to be put in place. The roots are going else, all over the place. They're going into their property, ruining their retaining walls, ruining their sewerage system, and they just do a heck of a lot of damage. And it's serious damage. And a lot of these folks, they don't have the funding to just, okay, I'll do the infrastructure. Here's 5,000 I can spend on my retaining wall, or 10,000 to dig up the pipes and do them over. You know, this is serious money, and it's because the improper trees were put in there to begin with, and we don't have the type of control that we can start to service these people. It's a major concern.
It's a major problem for us. I know it's been a major problem for the mayor. He's actually, each year that he's been here, he's doubly funded that, you get halfway through the year, we go to him, listen, we're out of money.
Donnie, I
You
waited
know?
3 years. You know what I did? Called an outside source, dig up the trees, did the roots, and I called Caruso, pave around my, and it cost me a few
It
$1,000s.
was a live tree out there.
It wasn't a live tree.
Okay.
It wasn't a live tree.
Counselor Patch, on signs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as the signs, I've seen in the last month or so, a great improvement in getting some signs put up and I've been working with 311 Allen and Randy up there, and they do a great job. I know you get them, and you guys, I know you changed the crew. You had a problem there with one being out a lot, and, but since you got on top of it, it's really improved a lot in the last couple of weeks, so just keep up the good work.
I can also attest to that. I know the guys have been down my neighborhood a lot. You know, these are signs that traffic had approved last fall, and we're just starting to get, especially down in the Garfield area where we made a one-way pattern. And I just want everybody to know that now Standish Road is one-way going from North Shore Road down to Porter, and Elliott Road is coming westbound from Porter all the way up to Clark Road. Clark Road is one-way going down to Walcott Road, and Curtis Road is going from Walcott down to Elliott only. So I ask everybody to be careful. Please follow the one-way signs, the do not enter signs, especially during school time. There's a lot of parents that are driving there, and we don't want anybody driving the wrong way and have a head-on collision. So that's my 2 points there. The only issue I had, Donnie, is on the 311 with signage. I've put in requests for signs to be done, and they weren't done, and they were closed. The items were closed.
I seen that, too, Ira. I think we talked a little bit about that. There are, guys look at things and they'll say, okay, is this actually warranted? Yeah, do we really need to put that sign up there? Because there's a lot of, not particularly picking on what you're saying, but there are some crazy requests out there for signage. And their thing was they just closed it out as opposed to saying, okay, I know there were two no U-turns signs on Nasha Road that, you know, the one I picked up on, they used to, and they would say, well, you know, what mandates the fact that we need these two no U-turn signs on Nasha Road? It's a double-line street, and is it that a chronic problem? So in something like that, they should probably just, you know, reach out to you or reach out to me and instead of just closing it out. I had, Ruben and I talked
Absolutely.
about it last week, and I've had that conversation with them, and it's something that they're gonna need to take another look at, because there are a lot of signs on one-way streets that people, we want one-way signs on these streets at the top of the streets going in the direction that they're going in. It's totally unnecessary, and they're very expensive. putting up a one-way street between the manpower, the sign, the poles, and the stud, and everything, it's $150 to put up one-way sign, if you're putting it completely up. And so if you're doing that on every street, the top of every street, and, some people are putting requests in, not necessarily the people here, but anybody can put that request in. It's not just councils, it's, people, they get on 311, they want to put a request in it. So I think we really have to have something in place, and that'll, this information that 311 will collect over the first year will give us an indicator of, what the actual real needs are and where we're going and what's warranted and what's not warranted. But they shouldn't be closing out things that if it's not done, it shouldn't be closed. There
Right.
should be some other type of explanation for it in,
Right.
communication in the future.
And the thing is, just on those no U-turn signs, those are at the bigger intersections on North Shore Road, Blake and Elliott, and it wasn't even my thoughts, is I got complaints from
I agree. But,
residents saying, hey, listen, anybody's doing it, and in those locations, there's no two lines, because it's broken up
Because of the
intersection.
Right.
And people are doing the one-ways, and, the U-turns, and sometimes it's bad, especially during the peak traffic hours, they cause havoc.
I see it here on Broadway, they do
Yep.
it, so
Yep.
it's,
So-
it's-
Signs, Council House?
No, just a general question with regard to 311.
We're gonna
That's
talk
good,
about
that's
that
good.
next.
And I just like to
We gotta
make
do
one-
the,
Can I make one point, like
Yep.
Charlie made on the snow removal, and how, it's been pretty good, it's pretty much always been pretty good up until, but here's an area that you can look at and say, okay, the streets are plenty wide, the people that live on those streets for the most part put their cars in their driveways, so the people in Ward 6 make it actually easy for us to do our job
Right.
up there. So that's the reason, not that we do put any more attention into Ward 6 than we do any other ward, it's just that it's wide open, wide streets, there's generally, the people don't park on the street
Right.
anyway. During a snowstorm, they park in their driveways, and that shows you the difference between if you had a total parking ban on.
that's a perfect area for it.
It's a perfect
Yeah.
example of it,
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah, no, right.
and that could be, I won't say as good in some of the other neighborhoods, but it would make it much better if there was no parking
Yep.
in the other areas.
Okay. The next item is the status of some new equipment. Just fill us in of the problem, and what you have, and how many pieces, actually mention how many pieces of equipment we've had out in snow, how many we, of our own, and how many private contractors, is that?
We generally we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We generally put about close between 10 and a dozen of our own pieces out now. That it's double what we were putting out last year. We still have one piece of equipment that we're going to be picking up this week. But I think what people were really interested in was the trash compactor that we had bought. When I received it, we put it into operation. I didn't like what I saw, and I sent it back to the manufacturer down in New Jersey for them to rectify the problems with it, not just with the operation, but I didn't like the paint job. We didn't particularly care for as well, and we sent it down there, and we're ordering a different type of tipping barrel for the back of it. I received communication today from Ed Nolan. The truck should be up in Massachusetts. Out in Worcester is where we have all our stuff built. It's Fleet Electric is the company that does all the specialty work on the trucks, and it should be there this week, where hopefully we'll get it back in the next week to 10 days if everything goes properly.
Because I know the guys have been working.
Oh, they're killing
a
themselves. They're working on the pickup
difficult
truck.
situation, work off the pickup truck,
Yes.
and, I know it's difficult, I've seen them out there, and I
Right.
know it's not nice.
No.
It's not nice for them, so, but thank you. And how many private contractors we put out on
It
this?
varies depending on the storm. We could have as many as, little as 20 and as many as 40 or 50 at
Depending on
times.
the amount of snow and the size of the equipment.
Yeah, and we're gonna need to kind of do some adjusting. The last couple of years, we lost a couple of our contractors, either went out of business or they cut back on certain things. And so this year, we did have a lack of some of the heavier equipment, like the loaders and bigger trucks that we need. And a lot of that has to do with our pricing. So we're, when this year's over, we'll sit down with the mayor and the auditor and decide, you know, where we need to go, and do a comparison of what other cities and towns are paying their vendors. Because I think that's where some of the heavy equipment went, because we're underpricing
Where the
our
money
heavier
goes.
equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Thank you for that. Now we'll talk about 311, and between you and Ruben and Alan, fill us in. I know Councilor Powers go first. He's new to the evening, hasn't said much, and this is the first item he wants to address. So, Ruben?
Hi, Ruben Cantor, Director of Office of Innovation and Data Management.
Good evening. Ruben, it's more or less a procedural question. If I myself or someone, a resident, puts in a request to 311, and let's say it's something that can't be done, is a communication directed back to the residents with the specific reason it can't be done, or to myself with the reason it can't be done?
I believe it should be. What I would like to do, actually, Alan, I don't know if you'd like to address this. Alan Fitzmaurice, who is the supervisor of the Office of 311, I think would be better suited to answer exactly how
Fine,
things are working on a
fine,
day-to-day
yeah.
basis on a question like that. So let me turn it over to Alan.
You wouldn't have a specific example of something that couldn't be done, because most of the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis are routine requests that the DPW or ISD or the Board of Health can handle. We do have the issue of sidewalks, where people are calling in to have sidewalks repaired, and that's a special situation that's being handled by community development and the DPW. And in a case like that, we explain the situation of the sidewalk list and also the issue with trees. But if we have the information that the request that they are making, for example, if someone called in and wanted a sign change or something that would have to go to the Traffic Commission, then we would advise them the procedure to have that done. I don't routinely get calls for service that we can't address.
What if somebody calls in with regard to a drainage issue on a particular street? That would go to DPW. Okay, at what point could we expect that to be resolved, or an answer as to why it can't be resolved or when it will be resolved?
Well, that's a very open-ended question, John, because
I understand that.
because of the conditions that exist, especially in your ward. If you're referring to Sagamore, you know, obviously, you know, that's the bottom of the fishbowl, as they say. You're at the lowest line area there. And when we get drastic, heavy, big storms, it generally takes a tide or two to get out, especially under the recent conditions that we had in the Eastern County ditch, where you have a buildup of phragmites and debris that's in that ditch. And the other aspect of that is it's frozen. And not only is the culvert frozen, but the tide gates themselves are frozen in place, so they're not operating at 100%. So there are times, especially in this last storm, and even drainage on streets that tie right into culverts. You know, especially once again, it was in your area on the Mills Ave area. You have icebergs sitting on, you know, three feet thick, sitting on top of an outfall. And, you know, and some of them freeze. So these are the conditions that we exist. Joanne, you had a similar problem down on Pearl Avenue. It's just that, you know, I think under the conditions, if that had happened, John, in this past storm, and it was, you know, 60 degrees out, I think that storm would have been easily taken care of in one storm cycle. But because of the conditions, the area where it is, it took a couple of days for the water to completely recede from that neighborhood. We've spent a lot of money down in that area on upgrades. I think the next step in the process there is to make sure that Eastern County ditch is cleared out properly. Revere Street, the culverts, the state culverts and everything, it's all part of the system. And once that happens, I'm not going to tell you that it'll be totally eliminated, but it will be much better than it is presently.
Well, hypothetically, maybe this is for Ruben to answer. If somebody on one of the, let's, for example, somebody on Archer Avenue or Gilbert or John or one of those streets calls to say that the water is not draining properly in the catch basin. Now, I understand that, it could be frozen at the outfall, but is this information disseminated to the person that calls, and are they given an idea as to when that might be resolved?
Well, the issue is, we don't even know it's frozen until it comes to us. And then we'll go down and look at it. And, so I don't think those kinks have been kind of worked out yet, John. We just put this thing online that, at some point, we'll report back to Alan at some point in time. And that's something we can build on with this program to make it that much better for the constituents. I don't think it's something that's automatic.
So we have just upgraded the Public Works work order system to a system that they're using much, I think, more effectively than the system they were using previously. So the way the process is now working is if a call or an email or a mobile request comes in for a catch basin cleaning, that request then immediately goes into the new work order system for the Public Works. The supervisors over at the water and sewer and the drainage side will get a text message informing them of the new work order. If there's any reason why they're not going to do that work order, they will let Alan and Randy know what's going on, or they'll put it in the system, say that they've inspected it, and that notification of any inspection or anything in progress immediately goes to 311, and they'll put it into the 311 system where if the constituent has left an email address, they'll get notified of any changes.
Or a telephone call, even if...
So we haven't been doing phone calls. If they're set up for a text message, we'll send a text of any updates. We haven't at this point been calling everybody for every single update on each request. That's a little bit beyond our current
I think
staffing level.
the important part of the system is, not only getting it done, but letting people know what status it's at, why it can or it can't get done, rather than just let them linger out there.
And so I would strongly encourage anyone who is calling or emailing or putting a notice on the web or on the mobile device to use your email address, because you will get every notification, or put a phone number where you can receive text messages. If you have the mobile device, you can also set your alerts to get those. There are a lot of ways to get those automatic notifications. Anytime there's an update from the Public Works side, you'll get a notification on the 311 side. But at this point, we haven't gone through the process of trying to figure out who has not left an email or a text message, and then making phone calls to those people. That's just hasn't been our process.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, what I do when we have storms of that nature, I take into consideration, number one, the full moon and the high tide. And once the level of water reaches a certain point, from experience, I know that there's no way for that water else to go but up. And until that water recedes in the marshes, I see, I'm very lucky. Living on the top of a marsh, I can look over. When I see the marsh fully involved with water, I know that I'm in for a rough night, because that's going to be affecting people's homes, and it's going to be affecting their sewer lines. And so I expect that to happen. But from experience, I know as soon as the tide is starting to go out and recede, I see the water level going down. And it's the only way it's going to come down. It's the only way. There's no way in the world you're going to remove that. And for all intents and purposes, because of the CDM project that's been going on this past year and annoying everybody, including myself, but one thing they did do was they cleaned these lines. I mean, they had to get down there and do their work. So as annoying as it was for all these folks during the past year or so, or two, it's been beneficial, because it's worked to our advantage now. And I noticed in this astronomically high tide that we had the other day, and with the amount of rain, I didn't get that many calls, based on the fact that we were clean, and as clean as you could possibly be.
I can answer that, Arthur. There's a simple answer to that. Those tide gates did exactly what they were supposed to do.
They did.
The areas that were not generally prone to flooding were underwater. And the areas that were generally prone to heavy flooding from the ocean didn't happen because the tide gates kept it
Even with
back.
that compromising walls at the
Yes,
floodgate, it
and,
was
you know, we
working.
had some issues in Ward 5 where it went over the top on Mills Ave, and the amount of rain that came with that storm just didn't get out because of the condition of the frozen culvert. But that is the reason. All the areas that were prone to flooding, that had those tide gates, didn't get a drop. But in all the areas that never flood was underwater. So it's
Right.
because the tide came up so high
Yep.
that it was actually coming up through the
No way you
catch
could stop
basins.
it.
It wasn't even coming through, you know, it was just coming right out through the drainage system. Beachmark got killed, Bennington Street, I mean, Revere Beach Parkway,
I knew it was
107,
coming as soon
North
as I
Shore
saw it.
Road, everywhere. I think there was only one road that you can get out of Revere. You either had to take Revere Beach Boulevard to Lynn or Route 1, and those were the only two ways you could get in and out of Revere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, I just want to say thank you. I used 311 a lot during the storm, and a lot of my issues were answered, so I just want to say thank you. I've had great success with 311 and your staff and you. Donnie, I have a question for you. It's about the pumping station on Bennington Street. What is that used for? Can that push out water, drain water?
Not from the areas that you're thinking about. That is actually for flooding from rain. It's not to stop the ocean from coming up or in. If it did happen to impact down through the Ward 2 area, if we had some flooding through the system there, or down on Broad Sound Avenue, we try to get it going. The Jones Road area, that'll take care of.
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Right, so the Bennington Street Pump
Right.
Station, like down on Belle Isle, Pearl Ave, and stuff like that, has no effect on it whatsoever.
Okay,
It does, however, take the watershed that's up behind the Immaculate Conception Church and that whole lower area down in there. It does alleviate the flooding in that area as well.
okay.
So it does
But it
reach
wouldn't
out-
it wouldn't clear Bennington Street if Bennington Street got,
No, it's
Okay.
because it's on the opposite side of
All right.
the
Thank you.
pump station.
Just wanted to add on the snow operations thing, just to the point you made. On January 4th and 5th, we had over 400 calls on those 2 days to 311. We had submitted 166 requests to Public Works related to snow requests, and every single one of them was closed in, most of them in under an hour, some in a few hours. So it was pretty remarkable to watch the operation at work, and we could see it all up on the screen as it was happening. So.
thank you.
Tell you guys, I'm a big supporter of the 311, as everybody knows, 311. And I just give one little story about the Public Works scenario. Literally 4 years ago, I asked for a catch basin to be cleaned out under the normal DPW work requests. And we had trouble with the Vector and the Claw and getting a private contractor in. And then 2 years later, I put it in under C-Click Fix, and nothing still got done. But last month, I put it in 311, and within a week, that catch basin was cleaned out, and now that area on Campbell Ave doesn't flood anymore. Because I remember when we had the fire at 190, it was during cold time, and that whole area flooded from Centennial Ave up to where the rise of Campbell Ave is.
That's also due to the fact that the mayor gave us 5 additional employees to help us in that department, and that department is really clicking on all cylinders. And I know it's his intention at some point in time when money allows to do the same thing on the general side. So I think along with the 311 system, with the new men and everything, I think people are going to be very happy as to see how the system actually operates in the future.
And Alan and Randy do a great job down there. They're, very personable. They're very nice on the phone, trying to take care of people's woes, and everybody's calling and panicking, and they have calm voices, and they know how to handle them. Ruben, I don't know.
But no one wants to talk to me. No, they have done such a great job.
Yeah.
I get to listen to them calm down people all day long, but I also think it's really...
And Denise, I'm sorry. we forgot
Yes,
Denise,
absolutely.
too.
It's also worth noting the relationship that they have built with the DPW guys. So they have a great relationship, and that really, I think, helps get those work orders in and done and back, and the communication has been fantastic. So I give them a lot of credit for the work they're
Absolutely.
doing building that relationship. And
It's a
all
good
that.
system, and I know we're still tweaking it as we go along.
It's
I'm
only
in to
4 months
talk to
old,
them in
so-
the excuse me?
It's only 4 months old, so...
That's it. And I just want to relate to, very quickly, to Council Guanasso's tree issue. I know the superintendent said there wasn't really a lot of money in the account. Now, I know that we as a council are willing to support DPW and the mayor. If you wanted to come in and put in $20,000, that's something we would support in the budget, because we know that the people are getting their services, and we can get that private contractor in there more for a year, for a full year, rather than run out of money in March. Because I know in the wintertime, we use a lot of tree work when trees go down on ice storms. So I think, we ought to, send a message to the mayor, and I think we're doing it right now. Give us some more money, the people deserve it, they pay their taxes for it. We'll put in some money for different things and get things done.
Put in the new budget.
Exactly, put it in the new budget. So I'll send that message to you, Ruben, to relate to the mayor. And, people, I'll tell you, taxes are going up, we know that, for various reasons. But if they know they're getting better services, they won't complain as much.
Happy to pass that along.
So, any other councilors willing to talk
Thank you.
about Public Works? Anything? Well, with that, we're 5 minutes early. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Very informative meeting. And I thank Ruben and Alan and Donnie for coming up and filling everybody in and keeping us up to date. Thank you. That is the end of our meeting. Thank you very much.